So this last segment is Listener Mailbag. This segment allows us to open up our Instagram and Facebook direct messages and answer some of the questions our followers have. If your question is chosen, please send an email to askmuledeer.org and we will send you a sticker and a hat for your participation. So today's question, and this is from Eric in Colorado, east of Denver. Hi, this is Eric from Colorado. I'm curious, have changes in tag allocations, season lengths, or types of weapons allowed actually made a notable difference in mule deer herd recovery? I'm going to go ahead and go to you, Andy, coming out of Colorado, and then we'll go to Robby afterwards.
All of our doe licenses are limited. So that it kind of goes back to our earlier conversation with doe harvest. And the short answer on that is yes. By having limited doe harvest, we can adjust doe licenses accordingly. And like Robby said, after a bad winter, if you lose a bunch of your herd, that's when you absolutely pull back to no doe harvest or little to no doe harvest. So from that standpoint, limited doe licenses allow us for herds to recover. A little more nuanced answer is in 1999, we went totally limited on buck licenses, on buck hunting. Prior to that, we had over-the-counter buck hunting in many units. And in 1999, in response to hunter concerns about the number of mature bucks in our herds, and we were running roughly 17 bucks per 100 does and had tried a number of different things to get that up with over-the-counter, and nothing really worked. We tried like 3-point restrictions, which didn't work. We tried a 3-day deer season, which didn't work. Yeah, I hear you. I want to hunt. And what we ended up doing that worked for us was totally limiting buck licenses, and it was successful in increasing our buck to doe ratios. They immediately popped up to 30 plus, and right now, last year post hunt, we're 31 bucks per 100 does statewide as a statewide average. So it worked for the intended purpose of increasing our buck to doe ratios and the number of mature bucks in our herds. It didn't necessarily work for increasing populations. And that's because, just because of the breeding structure of mule deer, you don't need a lot of bucks. You just need maybe 8 minimum per 100 does to breed all the does. Pregnancy rates are not where we see shortfalls in our deer herd performance. And the reason I say it's a little more nuanced is those bucks, if you're carrying high buck ratios, those bucks are competing for resources with does on the landscape. And so if you're buying into things like carrying capacity and stocking rates of deer on the landscape, like we talked about earlier, then you can only have a certain number of deer for that herd in those conditions. And if a lot of those are bucks, that's not your productive portion of the herd. So I think that's one aspect of why our herds are not bouncing back after these hard winters as fast as they were in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, is a lot more of our herd are bucks, and that's not where our fawns come from. Right. So I think you lose some of your herd productivity on a numbers game with higher bucks. Hunters are happy because there's a lot of bucks on the landscape.
Right, sure.
But in terms of I think the nature of the question is, have your structure, your licensing structure, has it increased population numbers, right? That's the question. So on the doe side, yes. On the increasing the number of bucks on the landscape, probably not. It probably is a little counterproductive.
Any thoughts just from a hunter and out of your state? I know this gentleman's out of Colorado,
but it's a universal question, I think, and that's why we're talking about mule deer management in every state all the time. Would you read me his question again?
Yeah, it says, this is Eric from Colorado. I'm curious, have changes in tag allocations, season lengths, or the types of weapons allowed actually made a noticeable difference in mule deer herd recovery?
Of course. Like, we cut out all the doe hunts in southeast Idaho, and our herd is rebounding fairly quickly in southeast Idaho in this last 3 years. And I'll just use that as the reference point. And across the border in Wyoming, they may have hit as low as 11,000 deer in the Wyoming range. And talking to Gary Freilich last year, he thinks they'll, at the rate we're going, short of some catastrophic winter or winter range fire or something like that, he thinks they'll be back to 30,000 in the next couple of years. And they did that by shortening seasons and things like that. But a lot of it is just because it's the nature of recovery when the habitat's in good shape. So Long answer, but yeah, it helps. And that's why I don't want to hamstring our biologists to be able to make these decisions. What was his next one?
And then types of weapons allowed.
Oh, of course, types of weapons allowed. It's a great big discussion right now, and we're going to have good data here in the next couple of years because Utah started a open-sighted rifle season. They took the scopes off their muzzleloaders and have created special units that are going to be great data sets on individual deer herds on how they're going to respond. And I'll just call it when you reduce the efficiency of a weapon. And on bucks only seasons, you're going to have more escapement for the bucks.
Right.
In 1 year, just good hunters I know in those units, anecdotally, but they're like, yeah, some bucks got away because of this. And so, yeah, I think restricting a weapon type is a good way to do it. And, this has been going on at some levels in states for years, archery only seasons and stuff like that.
And being longer, obviously, those archery seasons being.
Yeah, and being longer. And, there's discussions that maybe they're too long. But yeah, you can influence buck harvest on that. But I like how Andy broke it out with the does too, because if you're trying to control a population that might be at carrying capacity, you don't want to restrict weapon types then. You don't want everybody out there hunting with a bow when you're trying to keep the deer from over-browsing the winter range. What was his third one?
Changes in tag allocations, season lengths, the types of weapons allowed.
I want to address season length. Season length is a funny one. Everybody thinks, we hunt the deer too much. The seasons are too long. I hear that from hunters all the time. But Andy just gave an example of when Colorado did the awful 3-day deer season that everybody just absolutely hated. And I avoided Colorado. I didn't subject myself to that kind of pain. But the guys I knew that went, and tell me if I'm wrong, Andy, Colorado's always been crowded. It was even more crowded because everybody had 3 days to hunt. Am I wrong about that, Andy?
Yeah, we only did it. I can't rember.
It
was only 1 or 2 years. Yeah, and it didn't lower buck harvest. People just, instead of waiting, they were in a big hurry to shoot one because they only had 3 days. So
exactly,
3 days.
Yeah, 3 days. It was terrible. But again, that was just pressure from hunters that we're hunting the deer too long, so they tried that. But having I'm not saying you hunt them 60 days with a rifle. I'm not saying that at all. But sometimes just shortening the season, it just puts more people on the landscape at the same time, which lowers the quality of the hunt. It may backfire because with more people in a given area, there's less escapement at any given time. So you may not lower your buck harvest. You may increase your buck harvest. And so I think we always have to walk that line on season length. So to answer his question, yeah, I think season length can be used to influence a population. And he doesn't say this, but season dates. It ties into season length. And sorry to beat up on Colorado, Andy, but the season length it's the same. It's within a few days of what it was. But with our third seasons occurring, mostly after November 5th now, and fourth season clear into the end of November. Anecdotally, I know your buck to doe ratios are good. I've had Brandon Diamond on the podcast from the Gunnison Basin. Colorado's buck to doe ratios are really pretty good. You just gave some examples. We've got good recruitment. Fawn to doe ratios in some areas, probably due to managing below objective, but for what a lot of hunters are interested in my circle, the older bucks have taken a hit. And so yeah, we've influenced it definitely by having a season that goes late.
Yeah.
I think all those are tools.
Yeah. Awesome.